9 or chapter 9 in the Gospel of Mark. And it's also, by the way, in Homer, if you want to go back to Homer in the Iliad, several very beautiful examples in that, the Iliad as well. But now going back, what do we have here? If we make a comparative study of it, just as we're doing, we will have to say that the Lankavatara, as brilliant as it is, and has such a use of brilliance and light experiences, has really talked about, in Platonic language, in Neoplatonic language, the idea of the good. If we talk about it in terms of the Gita, that is that overwhelming experience of Arjuna in Book 11 that preceded the experience of the unfolding of time. If we talk about it in terms of the Tibetan Book of the Dead, this is a clear example of the overwhelming light experience that occurs at the moment of death, or between two thoughts, or between sleep and awake, that one is able to access. But very clearly, for the Tibetan Book of the Dead is an experience of the pure intellect, but not pure consciousness. Therefore, there's a similarity, theoretically, between pure consciousness of the Tibetan Book of the Dead and the idea of the good and the one. Equally well, in Hindu terms, the Mandukya Upanishad, with Gaudapada and Shankaracharya's commentary, very clearly the idea of Turiya. Turiya, the fourth part of Aum, the fourth part, is purely a non-dual. It's a non-dual in which no description can be made. Therefore, it has a kinship with pure consciousness and the good and the one. And therefore, this interesting study of the Lankavatara Sutra brings forward and returns, you see, it turns everything around in Buddhism, Lankavatara did, because it goes back to the fact that there is a self, not an anatman, but an atma, a realization of the self. That even though we can call it absolute purity, it's still talking about something as real. And though the Lankavatara Sutra does use the idea of shunya, or shunyata, right, it doesn't stress it at all in this work. And equally well, the triple body of the Trikaya is only touched somewhat because it appears that it may have been too early for the development of the Trikaya movement in Buddhism. Therefore, all they have is the Nirmanakaya. But to talk about something as real is not to say shunyata. It's talking about something that is, that has these qualities, and therefore it can be described. Now, it's a magnificent sutra. I'm not in any way criticizing it, obviously, but I think we can approach it in a comparative way, and this is what I wanted to bring to your attention tonight. So, hope I can answer some questions for you. Thank you.
If one wants to understand Plato, one should read the Republic of Tibet. Should one read the Republic of Tibet in order to understand Plato?
Yes. One must become educated. There's a certain way of reading Plato. It takes such strictness of reading. One has to approach it with great integrity and follow every metaphor and link it all. See, as this doesn't have an organic whole and structure, Plato's Republic has a vast and intricate structure which plays on levels of meaning in a very, very magnificent, beautiful way. but not just for artistic reasons. It carries a level of meaning throughout the whole. And especially the way he unfolds the dialectic, and I presume you're familiar with it. Yes, I think that's probably one of the works that is probably least understood in the academic world, because most people want to take it as a model for the state, a republic, and they forget that the subtitle is righteousness, dikaiesuin, which is not legal. Our use of the word justice has a legalistic side to it, but that isn't the side in the republic. Dikaiesuin is righteousness, it's a higher principle. I hope I've answered your question. Yeah. Sir?
In using Plato, you used the idea of God.
Yes.
But in the Lankavatara Sutra, there would not be the concept of God.
No, absolutely correct. They would object to it. Yes. I did that just to try to show that there's a way of talking about the Alivijnana, because in all of those characteristics, it can be said to be similar. Though the Lankavatara Sutra adds some things that Plato didn't have, and therefore it's a very nice thing to bring into it, such as its mirror-like quality, the fact that it isn't active, the fact that it is something that contains everything in it itself. And in order to, I brought in the idea into Lankavatara Sutra, which doesn't have it, of course, is the difference between eternity and time. That comes from the Platonic world, but I used that to help make the bridge and make it more accessible, I hope. Yeah. So I picked up a couple of colors from one while I was painting with the other. Yes, quite right.
How does the silence play into the 10,000 suns and that brilliance in its offset to the idea of the good, which is the spoken word?
No. The idea of the good is the spoken word. Maybe you should talk more before I say something. It is a spoken word. Logos, you mean?
No, I mean the spoken word as opposed to the silence. How does it play in that brightness of the light that you described earlier, the 10,000 suns? Which is what you find as...
Yes, go ahead.
Which is what you find when you're on that brisk air on the mountains as you contrast into this immense feeling.
Yes. I don't know whether I'm going to take you off a bit, but the thing that we don't spend too much time on, which I really think is very important, is you see, this works, Lankavatara and a good deal of philosophy tries to make clear or to make accessible to our understanding the relationship between this and the universe. And so much attention is paid to this that the higher and the more interesting question